Oh man, let's do it, guys. Let's talk some American Horror Story Cult Neighbors from Hell spoiler review. So if you do not want to be spoiled at this point, please go check out my regular non-spoiler review on my channel, Two Geek Reviews. No spoilers whatsoever in that. So but this one we're talking spoilers, baby, on tonight's episode. Well, I got to see it tonight. I think critics got to see it a little bit earlier, but I really wanted to just really dwell into what the hell is going on in this episode, previous episodes, and the episodes going forward. But let's talk about, like, last week we had a cliffhanger. We had Sarah Paulson's character. She shoots one of her workers, actually, who was accused of killing his coworker Pedro, and a lot of people in this episode are saying it's self-defense. She's losing it even more. And then Ivy, Ivy in this episode's really barely handling it all. But really, this episode's really focusing on Sarah Paulson killing this guy who happened to be Mexican, killing this guy. Race, the big thing about in this episode was racism, and immigration, of course, was a thing in last episode. Now it's about Sarah Paulson killing this guy, right? This guy, who they said that to Sarah Paulson that it was out of self defense. They didn't know about this. They had this guy was like a suspect of the killings of the current killing. So a lot of his family members, a lot of the Hispanic people are going up in arms, are there at the restaurant of her and her wife's restaurant, protesting. A lot of protesting in this episode. And Sarah Paulson's losing it. Sarah Paulson's even losing it even more at this point. So what I did like about this episode, though, was a lot of the strain that comes with this going on, and Ivy and Sarah Paulson's relationship. I liked the strain. I like the back and forth because I think we all feel for Ivy, and Sarah Paulson's character has been so whiny, crying all the time. There is at one point, though, in the episode where she kind of like finally stands for herself, so to speak. But I want to talk about the beginning of this episode first. So the beginning of this episode, we see the psychologist, right? We see the psychologist talking to this woman. This woman has a phobia where when she was younger, her father put her in the cabinet, locked her in. So she has this like kind of doesn't like being. She has this dreams of being in the casket, and then finally, when her father croaked, she closes the casket. And she's like, "Good riddance," and she's able to conquer this phobia. Well, she's talking to the counselor, who it's the same counselor for Sarah Paulson's character, and she, after the whole thing and her telling the counselor thank you, blah blah blah, her and her husband go back to the house, and her husband's butt ass naked says, "I'll be back, I got a surprise for you." Go gets butt ass naked somewhere off screen. You hear a thud, you hear some crashing sounds, you see her walking into a room, and you have two big caskets, and she's freaking the hell out, people. She's freaking out. She's like, "Oh shit!" And then you see the clowns, the killer clowns that we've seen, the cult-like clowns we've seen in the series so far. Bring her husband in, grab her, put her in the casket, put her husband in the casket, and they shut that shit. They seal that shit down. They seal it down. Of course, their deaths make it on the news. Sarah Paulson, her wife, hears about it. But how interesting, the same counselor who counseled this woman who ended up dying, who's counseling Sarah Paulson, who even has a chat with her on the phone about what she needs to do, what she shouldn't do, blah, blah, blah. He has to be in on it, right? He has to be in on it. We see him talking to this woman in the very beginning. We see him talking to Sarah Paulson. We see him so laid back and chilled, the counselor, right? And not a blink of an eye, not like we don't get any shots, we don't get any reaction of him saying, "Oh shit, that was my client that died on the news. That's my client. She just died." No, he's so laid back. He's sitting on his chair. He's looking at his painting. This guy has to be involved. Because how do these clowns know about a lot. First of all, about that woman's phobia about being locked in a casket or being locked in confined spaces. How do they know when to show up with Sarah Paulson with the grocery store, or even her phobia of what was it, clowns or some shit like that? Like, how do they know that? Who has that information? The counselor has that information. So problem is, if this is true, it's so obvious, so predictable. It's right there in front of your face that he's involved with it. But the way this episode played out, I think his acting, I think, of course, the two neighbors acting is so cheesy and so just kind of old-fashioned kind of horror that my non-spoiler review, I said, this is why you can't really take it too seriously. You can't really take it too seriously of a lot of deaths that are happening or what's going on with a lot of these characters, because they don't play it too serious. They don't play it serious at all. They just play the comical aspect of it, even though they're not going ha laugh out funny on there. It's more subtle than that. It's more expression and acting wise. But yeah, so I mean, as we move along through the episode, the one we see Sarah Paulson interact with Evan Peters' character, who says that he's going to take care of her little mob, her little protesters in front of her shop. He does do that, but what I don't get is why she is willing she doesn't roll up that window all the way to Evan Peters' face. Like, this guy's nuts. I don't care if he's saying like, I got you. This guy's nuts. So you saw that previously. So I don't get that. She's doing character wise, like she's doing stupid stuff. She's like, she wouldn't, if a real person after last couple of episodes dealing with Evan Peters' character wouldn't be like, not roll her window all the way up and not listen to us. Like, she would say, no, I don't want to hear what you have to say. You're a crazy person. I don't like your hair. Be gone. But of course, she leaves it halfway up and she hears what he says. And he pretty much says, he's pretty much whispering to her ear, I got you. I got you. Don't ever say sorry about killing a Mexican. That's basically what he's saying. So as much, I love Evan Peters though. I love Evan Peters. He is the most solid actor in the American Horror Story series, hands down. He has been consistent, and Sarah Paulson has as well. It's just her character up until this point, we see her still whining, we still see her crying, we still see her needing Ivy, needing somebody there. I mean, remember when she wanted Winter to stay in the last episode, and Winter was like, bitch, I'm gone. And Winter does come back in this episode, but she plays a big wrench between Ivy and Sarah Paulson's marriage. But Sarah Paulson's character has been annoying up until this point. But it might get better. It might get better because the episode title of tonight's episode was Neighbors from Hell. And there was a scene where, if of course you watched the episode, where Sarah Paulson gets a knock on the door. She opens the door, and it's her two neighbors, right? It's the guy from Parks and Rec, and it's his wife, the gay guy and his wife. And they're wearing sombreros. And this is where the comedy aspect comes in. And American Horror Story always uses comedy at some point. So they have sombreros, and Sarah Paulson's like, what, why are you wearing sombreros? And see, I'm Mexican. I can barely even say the word. And they're like, because you killed what? You're a racist. We don't want you in our neighborhood. She's like, I've been here before you. She's like, and the guy's just like throwing Taco Bell coupons at her. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. I did love that scene though. It was pretty hilarious. But the neighbors are they're calling their names. They give her son Oz a hamster. The hamster death scene was hands down one of the funniest scenes I've seen in American Horror Story, and it was timed so perfectly, I gotta say. But yeah, so they're like just really calling their. She calls them, tells them we didn't want the hamster for Oz. They're still talking shit. You see the strain between the neighbor and his wife. You see that strain because he's gay, and you see him looking at other men, and she's kind of like feeling that he's gonna leave her. This is the point where it goes to Evan Peters, and he's doing these pinky, like, not promises, but the little pinky thing where they're talking truth, where I was like, wait, what the hell is going on here? So he does a little pinky thing to both those neighbors. He does it to the husband who's gay. He does it to the wife. And I'm like, does he have these numbers on speed dial? Like, how do is Winter telling them I have a friend that could help you? Because that's the only one. Like, where did that interaction come? How do they know this guy, right? Of course, the husband who's gay says, like, I want my, Evan Peters. First of all, Evan Peters slaps the shit out of his wife when they do the little pinky promise. She says something stupid, and he just, like, slaps the shit out of her. She goes falling to the ground. But so he's talking, but after that little interaction, because she's conveying to her feelings, like, yes, I'm afraid that my husband's gonna leave me for another man, blah blah blah. But when he's talking to the husband, he's like straight out says, like, yeah, after a little hesitant, he says, like, yeah, I want my wife to actually be dead. And later on in the episode, we see that, yeah, exactly. Their house, Sarah Paulson's house, gets marked by this circle, pretty much the marking of these killers who are the clowns, that, yeah, they are indeed going to die. So we definitely see the markings on the house. The wife ends up dying. Sarah Paulson is next up on the list. We see, of course, freaking Oz gets this link and goes straight and finds this video of her mom, Sarah Paulson, and Winter together in that bathtub scene, and it kind of looks like she's like kind of fingering her, and then freaking Ivy blows up on her. So we see that happening, which I don't know how Oz was able to get into that video on those links and stuff. So there's a lot of things that are kind of like weird, like, okay, how did these two neighbors get even in any contact with Evan Peters' character? Of course, Evan Peters would probably be maybe walking around the neighborhood, knocking on the door, this and that. But the killer clowns are not a huge part in too much of what's going on. What the thing is that's interesting is this truck that's going along the neighborhood and spraying these chemicals, because we see Sarah Paulson, we see Ivy coming out of their house, and there's like 30 dead crows on their lawn. So what are those chemicals? What is going on throughout this whole kind of like, it was a lot of things to take in, a lot of things to think about in this whole episode. I mean, you had the death of the gay guy's wife, him being accused of being the murderer, him yelling and shouting at Sarah Paulson that she's the one, because Sarah Paulson early on in the episode went and threatened them. So there is so much things going on in here. But the main issue was the political aspect of it, or not the political, but overall the immigration, the racism aspect of everything. Of course, Sarah Paulson's character killing Pedro, and then we see the kind of like this mob going at her. We see her being called racist. We see her being called crazy. We see a lot of things happening to this character, but her standing up and saying to these neighbors, like, if you ever come near my house, if you ever come near my family, I'm going to kill you. Like, I'm going to beat the shit out of you, basically. We see a little step from that character. That's what I want to see. I want to see her fighting back. People are saying she's crazy. People are saying, that she's racist. I want to see this character really fight back and not cry and rely on her wife or rely on any other people's help, especially the counselors. I think the counselor, like I said, is involved with it. I think there was kind of a pretty much some things to like about this episode. I think once again, I think the production when it comes to the costumes and is really good. I think that the characters are the weakest point of so far, because we still are confused with these characters. We still don't know what these. Well, we know Sarah Paulson's character, we know Ivy, we know Oz. Winter, we still get a shroud of mystery of, and Evan Peters, like we get what he wants to kind of do with this revolution, but we still don't know too much about him, if he's involved with these clowns, which most likely he is, with these killer clowns. We don't know what's now. Another element comes in with this chemicals truck going along and being part of the cult clowns and stuff. And of course the marking of if your house gets marked, you're going to die, or somebody's going to die. So there's a lot of just things being thrown at us especially in this episode. And I mean, we're not going to get any answers until later on down the line. I really feel like it is pretty confusing, but I'm still kind of chugging along to see, okay, what's going to be next. Like I said, I did like the rift between Sarah Paulson and Ivy. I really liked how Ivy just slapped her really hard and said, I'm gone. You could be by yourself, because we get that. We get that Ivy is just really losing it. She's trying her best. She tried her best, and it's just Sarah Paulson's not giving her the time of day to really defend her anymore. So things in this episode to really kind of keep your eye on, of course, is the chemicals. Of course, is the marking of the door. But not only that, is the counselor. I think you really need to keep your eye on the counselor and see if he might be involved in a lot of this. And even the cop had a weird expression when he was handling the evidence of the hamster, which was still kind of funny. Sarah Paulson, we think that she's going crazy. We think that she's just seeing things, but as it's starting to become clear, is that these clowns are real and these clowns are killing people. I think that so far it's the weakest of the seasons. There's nothing really to grasp onto other than politics, the issues that go around. I get it. The world is messed up as much as anything horrific, monsters, or anything like that. But I think this episode, what it fails on is the execution. I think there's a lot of things in here where it's confusing. It doesn't, and it's relying on you to keep watching when that shouldn't be the case. You should kind of know what shows do this, but you should get a little something for each episode. I feel like there is some new things being presented, yet we're still doing the old stuff in these last 2 episodes, and we're still not any clearer on what the whole kind of series is kind of about. But overall, okay episode. I'm gonna watch the next episode, see where we're at on this one. But I'm feeling a little bit of it, but I'm not feeling a lot of it. I'm not, especially the her always mentioning like, oh, you voted this, you didn't vote for Hillary kind of stuff was kind of funny. I'm interested to see where this might go, but I'm not shocked that it's just not as good as maybe some of the other series. But we'll see. We'll see how the middle and the ending does for American Horror Story Cult. So thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video if you like, and comment below. Love to hear your guys' thoughts. I want to thank Paul Phelps. I love American Horror Story as well. American Horror Story Cult, time will tell if I will actually end up loving the hell out of the series. So thank you guys, and you guys have a good night, and goodbye.